Hamjambo, this is Ruth Kamau, and welcome to Wasafiri Africa, where we celebrate Africa and things African. 30 kilometers northeast of Cape Town is Durbanville, where rolling hills and wide plains offer a sense of expanse in this golden valley of wheat and wine. Dubbed Sauvignon Blanc Country, Durbanville is also a popular high-income residential area, though demographics still overwhelmingly reflect the impact of South Africa's segregated history. With a view towards the future, Durbanville is only 13 kilometers from the planned Cape Winelands Airport, Cape Town's second international airport, scheduled to open in 2028. Twendeni, Africa is ready. Raised in Durbanville, Faye Kabali-Kagwa is a rising star in the world of theatre arts and youth advocacy. An alumni of Rhodes University in Makanda, South Africa, she graduated in dramatic arts with honors in sociology. Faye has been selected as one of 9 international curators at the 17th iteration of the prestigious Theatre der Welt Festival in Chemnitz, Germany, to be held in June-July 2026. Faye will once again be participating in turning the world's attention onto African storytelling. The recognition is earned through several years of dedicated involvement in African theatre arts in Southern and East Africa. Faye Kabali-Kagwa was most recently curator at Arsitage, South Africa, based in Cape Town, where she shepherded the aptly named Cradle of Creativity. And all this done while still in her 30s, eyes shimmering with a vision of a future that Faye is eager to share with the world. With her quick laughter and her astute eye and ear for African theatre arts, let's get a download of all the good things growing in Faye Kabali-Kagwa's world. Hey, Faye.
Hey. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. I like the way you just did your hands like, ta-da! Yep, that's you. That's you. That's you. Thank you so much for being here today. It is a quiet day in Cape Town. Quiet because it's raining. And you know how the mood gets when it's raining in Cape Town. Everything is so subdued. Everything is like sleepy, you know? And it's so lovely to be sitting here with you and drinking copious amounts of rooibos and having a conversation and learning things about you that I had no idea about. So thank you so much for making time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Good. Let's hold that thought. Okay, cool. So Faye, you know what? Just talking to you now, I just thought to myself, you know, we're kind of going to skirt around some things to get to where you're going, because I think where you're going is very exciting. I think it's important for us to talk about the things that you've been doing since you graduated. So studied dramatic arts with an honors in sociology. So let's start at 2014. What's Infecting the City?
So Infecting the City is now called like the ICA Live Arts Festival.
Okay.
And basically it's performances that happen outside of a theatre space in the general public. Within the general public. It's curated by Jay Patha. And what you have is a program where if you pop up at different moments, you might stumble across a performance, whether that be, for example, at the Slave Lodge or in the middle of the square. Church Square is also has been one of the venues.
Okay.
And I started in 2014 as an info desk person where I was stationed at the hub where visitors would come in and ask questions. So my job was to know where things were happening, when they were happening, who was performing, and to direct people to the performances. I wasn't happy that I didn't always get to see the performances, but what it did give me was like a much broader sense of what performance could be, and possibility for what can happen within the city. It brought a little bit of like spark and imagination.
It did. It did. I remember that it gave you a very good, it's almost like being in the kitchen and seeing how the meals are being made. And then you begin to understand, wow, this is there's a production happening in the kitchen. You just see the food on the plate. So let's jump from there, and then we go to 2016, right? So you've gotten a taste of what it is like to be involved in some kind of production, and then Faye being Faye, your brain started working about how to get people together.
Yeah, what I really enjoyed about university was like for the first time I was surrounded by other Africans. My parents are from Uganda, and we would go every 2 years or so. But I didn't really start connecting with my cousins until Facebook happened. And so...
Oh my gosh, did you hear what you said?
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's like Facebook happened. So the things we take for granted today, but there was a time there was no Facebook.
Right, because Facebook allowed me insight into my cousins' lives and who they were and who they were shaping up to be, which you don't get when I came here once when I was 10, then I see you again at a family function at 12, and then at 14, maybe I don't see you again, and I see you again at 16. So I could see what my cousins thought were funny, what jokes were in, maybe the music, see what we had in common. It wasn't necessarily something that I had to build when I was in Uganda. And uni was kind of the same. They had different African societies. So I joined ESOC, the East African Society. And when I came back to Cape Town, I was like, I am sure there are other East Africans in Cape Town, beyond just my family, friends. Yeah, how could I find and build community with them? So I had this idea that I wanted to have a tea for East African women, but I also really wanted to do like a portrait series. But I felt like having a portrait series and just having one-on-one interviews maybe and taking a picture felt very formal, and I wanted both the women and the photographers who took part in this event to feel like they had kind of ownership of what was being done, but also to meet other people. And so I told my mom. She said I should call you another East African
woman
in the diaspora. With a whole lodge, though. I pitched the idea to you with my friend Aisha Mugo. Yeah, we went about creating a space where East African women could sit and talk about home, where they could have their pictures taken, and where that immigrant experience could be spoken about in its totality. But it became a way to speak about what it meant to be a young woman in Cape Town at that particular time.
The reason why it was such a no-brainer for me to say is it was also because it made so much sense to me, because being in Ikaya is like being in a world on my own. It's a microcosm. And at that time, it was so involving. I actually did pretty much nothing but my children in Ikaya. And so I wasn't meeting other people, and definitely not people from East Africa. So I was also as curious as you were, for different reasons, but we had the same objective. It was so really lovely to have you curate that event. It started with throw cushions on the floor and kangas. Yes. Yeah, so it was throw cushions and on the floor and kangas and Masai blankets, and we were eating chapatis and samosas and
masala chai. Very important.
Yes, exactly. And it was an afternoon of shared sisterhood, but in a different way, celebrating our ethnicity and being in South Africa and what that meant for us. So then fast forward from that event, people got to hear about it, people got excited about it. And then what happened?
What happened after that is that I was invited to participate in a moving arts residency called EAST, the East African Soul Train. So we moved from, it was only 5 days, but we went by train from Nairobi to Kilifi, and then spent, I think, about 3 days in Kilifi. And this was done with different creatives from Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda. So people like DJ Kampire was there from Uganda, Blinky Bill from Kenya, Jinku from the EA Wave. You also had like Gloria Wavamuno, who was the founder of the Kampala Fashion Week. You had photographers like Martin Karumwa. You also had like Moses, who he's been working on. He worked on the documentary on Bobby Wine and his pursuit of the presidency, and for that he
in Uganda,
yes, and for that he has he hasn't been able to return to Uganda. It was the first time I began to see reasons that East Africa could become home for me outside of my family.
Yeah.
Because I think that's also
they're the kindred spirits that you found there. They're interested in what you're interested in, and they also happen to be East Africans.
Right, because I think when you are divorced from home in some way, the question really is like, is the only thing that keeps me connected to this space family, or can it be more?
Yeah, we all have to grapple with that. I mean, I've lived in South Africa since 1999. Okay, I left for a short gap there for 4 years or so, but then in Cape Town, it's coming up 19 years. And I'm like, wow, it's a long time. My children have grown up here. You know, when they consider Cape Town home more than Nairobi, when they go home, they enjoy seeing the family. But you can't help doing that. As you said, you have to have something that kind of will connect you to that space more than just the fact that your parents are connected to that space. It has to become personal. And so you're on this soul train. I was so amazed to hear about it because I hadn't heard about it before you mentioned it and today. And I was super excited, and I started Googling all these people. I feel like I was very plugged into the theater when I lived in Kenya because I did my productions. You know, I wrote plays, and every 2 years there was a production at the French Cultural Center. And then I left, and it's like, vacuum, you know? And then to see what's happening.
The scene there is quite small, more informal, and I suppose more porous than it is in South Africa, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I think like people can move through Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda. You can move through quite easily. Like people cross borders in a way that like South Africans don't really.
I think now, maybe with your generation and younger, they're getting a bit more curious about the rest of Africa. But I don't think that has traditionally been the case. And I think that has a lot to do with how apartheid socialized people. You know, north of the Limpopo, it was like, there's nothing to see there, guys. You know, let's go home. You know, the lights are actually off, you know. And so it's actually been a discovery for a lot of people to find the lights have not been off. In fact, they are always on, sort of thing, you know. And then 2018, you built on that.
2018, I was one of the judges for the Cape Town Fringe Festival. So that year they had tried to have an offshoot of the National Arts Festival in different places, and so they were bringing a lot of shows that had gone to the National Arts Festival to Cape Town and having like a Fringe Festival program. And so my job was to go and see different theatre productions, and then with the panel decide the awards. What was cool about it though is that the festival took place in different centres around Cape Town. I didn't know theatre was happening in Khayelitsha or in Delft or in Nyanga, and so it was a really good experience for me as well to decenter the CBD or the southern suburbs as places where work exclusively happens.
Yeah, I know. I think that, Cape Town it's still affected by the way people live geographically, you know. And so once people leave the office, so to speak. They go into their safe geographic areas and they socialize in those areas. And your kids tend to go to school somewhere there. So you'll be ignorant of that. And I use the word ignorant because it's happening. It's just that you don't know about it, and there's nothing that's pulling you in that way. You have to become more intentional. And so I'm not surprised that you didn't know. Like for me, even with other things that I've been able to experience in Nyanga and Kalisha Guguletu, it's because you become intentional, you become more curious about it. When you were doing the Fringe Festival, you were already at Assitege, and Assitege is ASSITEJ, but it's actually a French acronym, right?
Yes, it's the French acronym. It stands for the International Association of Theatre for Children and Young People.
Yeah, so that I found really interesting, Faye, because I honestly didn't realize that you have been focusing so much on young children.
Yeah, it's interesting because our director started Assitege South Africa because she was exposed to the Assitege International at some point. And she was like, oh, this is fascinating. Well, I would love to see theatre for children and young audiences. And so before I started working at Assitege, I didn't know that there were practitioners who were making work for sometimes literal babies. Then we have work for like 2 to 7. For kids under 7, that will be called early years work. And then you'd get into what we consider children from like 7 until 16, about 16, and then they're considered youth.
Yes.
You know, the young
until
adults.
20 years old or
Yeah,
something. When you're finishing matric.
Yeah, you'd be young adults. So when people are like, why theatre for young children? I was like, well, look, just like we have different readers for different levels of reading.
Yeah.
And if you go to any well-resourced library, you will find entire sections for children, and they're vast. Like there are comic books, there are factual science books and history books, there are novels, there are romance novels, and there are ones that are interested in psychology. Like, you know, the library is vast for children. And even if you look at children's television as well, they're made for specific age groups. And it's like what we need to keep cognizance of is their developmental age. And I say that I was brought up in this way because my mom, she always told me bedtime stories from home, and she'd sing lullabies to me. She would also take me to the public library in Bellville when I was young. It started with her reading books to me, and then I started picking up books for myself. So I knew what my tastes were. I could tell you what kind of stories that I liked and wanted to engage in from when I was like 7 or younger, you know. Like in grade 1, we used to have a library period where you'd go to the library, the school library, and take out books. And I wasn't allowed to take out a book because I had written either my A or the E backwards in my name. And so the teacher had told me to go back to my desk and rewrite it, and then I could take out the book. But then the bell rang, and that couldn't happen. But then I figured out that if you went at break time, then you would have a library prefect, and they didn't care how you spelled your name. And that is how I got around being told what I can and cannot read. The idea that you could participate as a young person in creative activities and that they're stimulating activities is really how I was raised. And so then when I applied that to this particular world, I found it quite stimulating and engaging.
You know, when you put it like that, it becomes like a no-brainer to respect the developmental age of the child, because expressing oneself artistically, whether it's through music or performance art or drawing, it has huge psychological and emotional benefit. Mm-hmm. And when you think about South Africa's history and the trauma that many of these communities go through, just even every day. It's good to have that outlet, and it's good to have that outlet made available from a very early age, so people can express, they can begin to tell their stories, and they can begin to feel seen, and they begin to feel heard.
So, like, Assetage is really focused on getting people to see theatre for young people as professional work. You know, people are creating stories for children and can say, I'm a professional actor, I'm a professional theatre maker. The director, Yvette Hardy, was looking at how to get the theatre award panels, like in Cape Town and Johannesburg, to have a category for theatre for children and young people, which now exists, which is very exciting and really cool. Having models that can support that is quite important.
Yeah.
It's why a lot of the work at Assetage, for example, is done through schools or creches, or like NGO groups, where you can where we can either organize like a bus or transport for a large group of children to go to different theatrical spaces, or potentially if work is touring, we could take work and have it like directly happen at the school or at a creche. With my other projects is really thinking about how, if you want to tell a story, like how do you incorporate the people that you want to speak to?
It's interesting you should say that, because now I want to fast forward us to, I think, 2020 or 2021. When did you do Dear Us?
Dear Us, I did in 2020.
2020. So 2020 was COVID. Now we were locked up in our homes and everything. And you did something really interesting. And I'm going to play just the beginning of it.
After 11 years of school, we made it. Matric 2020. It hasn't been the year we expected. Many didn't have matric dances, their last sporting seasons. People didn't ask that person out. But nonetheless, here we are. This is a WhatsApp podcast, a space for us to talk about what we want, how we want, and when we want. I'm Luanga, and welcome to Dear Us.
Dear Us, Dear Us, keep it 100. Dear Us, this is going to be okay. Dear Us, we're unforgettable. Dear Us, I'm tired. Dear Us, Matric 2020 is history. Dear Us, we made it.
Faye. How did you cook up Dear Us, you and your team? Because I loved it. I have never deleted it from my WhatsApp. And you know, the funny thing is, we were talking about how we're holding stuff on our phones earlier, and you had to delete a lot of stuff because, you know, and I'm doing the same thing. And I can't delete Dear Us. It really triggers my imagination all the time about how to work and keep storytelling alive, even when people are not together, how to use technology and everything. So I just want to hear, how did it all begin? Because I've never asked you.
So I do want to say that I'm glad you kept it on your phone. It is on Spotify.
You see, this is the deleting problem we were talking about.
So,
yeah, but it's kind of like, okay, it's on my phone. All right, okay, it's on Spotify, Ruth. You can delete it. It feels safe. Okay.
Hashtag Dear Us Matric 2020 is what it's called. So in 2020 was very freeing for me. I know it was really difficult and a hard time for many people. I'm not taking away from that. But 2020, because everything felt so unpredictable and like the world that as we knew it was disintegrating, I felt like there was room to experiment. And so one of the places I was experimenting on was WhatsApp, because accessibility is very important to me. And I was seeing WhatsApp really as a space to... I just felt it was getting really active. Like in Cape Town, there were the CAN networks, there were the community action networks that were being formed, where people were organizing and supporting each other through that. There were all the different voice notes that were being sent. People who said they hated voice notes were now sending 20-minute voice notes that were forwarded from who knows where, because the person never says who they are, where they come from, and what qualifications they had, but there were conspiracy theories that were shared. There were things shared about like how to keep yourself safe, etc. And a big push was put on getting information out there. I applied for the Fakugezi Digital Curation Bootcamp. And as part of that, we had to pitch an idea. The entire project, Dear Us, was focused on the lives of matric learners. Because people were very worried about how the kids were going to pass and how were they going to be kept safe. And I was like, I wonder what it's like to be in your final year of high school. Because firstly, that 3-week lockdown ended up being like 4 or 5 months. It was
serious lockdown for 5 months.
It was really long.
Yeah.
People also sometimes dream about what they're going to wear
Yes.
at their matric dance.
Yes.
And that big celebration. And I was like, I am wondering, just out of a space of curiosity, I was like, what are matrics feeling right now, and can I create a project where we can explore this digitally, but also in a way that is curious rather than imposing. The idea for the podcast came because I was inspired by another project that Frank Summers and Vashti were working on, where they basically had prompts that they would send out to people, and then they would get voice notes back and stitch it into like a little project that you could listen to. And I think it evoked kind of like the same thing that you were feeling about the podcast, where you get this voice note with all these other voices delivered to you, and there's something that feels incredibly personal. Like receiving a voice note feels so personal.
Especially then. Remember we were locked in our own houses, so you couldn't leave. You spoke only to your family.
Yes.
Or your friends, but you didn't see other people. You didn't even see your family. It was a serious lockdown for the first 5 months. But even after then, it was still not that easy to get around, and it took a long time for people to feel comfortable to be in other people's company, because it had become so ingrained in people to be apart. So my daughter was in grade 11, and she was talking with the other students about what was happening to the matrics, and they were so fearful that they would never have their matric dance. They would never be able to go on the stage and receive those different awards we were talking about that, have been made so much of our learning culture,
Right. I was like, it's a huge loss. Outside of the loss of life that is happening and freedoms, there are small freedoms that are also being taken away.
Yes.
Or that were also being taken away. And I was like, I know that so many people are worried about their education and how they're going to learn. But I wanted to also make space for kind of like the small things that were bringing them joy, the small things that were making them anxious. And that's how the podcast was born, with the 6 matrics that I did an exhibition with. One of them, Mihlali, was my mentee through a program called Meant to Grow. Yeah, she
done.
So her episode is about what we call the night that never was.
Yeah, I have them all.
Yeah. But if other people want to know, like night that,
of course, please
the
share.
night that never was focused on the matric ball. So I asked the questions like, when did you realize that you weren't going to have a matric ball? Did you have an idea of your outfit? How did you imagine that it would have played out? is there something you would have wanted to do with your friends or want to do with your friends? What would that look like? And what would what are 3 songs that you would have wanted to play?
Bless, man. You know, it's just like it's my final year of high school. Oh.
Right, but it's what I like doing is also what I like doing when I'm working with people, and especially with youth, is to be aware that is to ask open-ended questions. I think a lot of us are so used to having an expectation of what should be said. So it wasn't
especially parents.
Yeah. So I'm
putting up my hand before anybody calls me out. Yeah, I know that.
So it's not like, aren't you sad you're not going to have a matric ball? It's like, when did you learn you weren't going to? Yeah. When did you learn you weren't going to have it? One of the other episodes that we have is about just like breathing and letting go, and just really about like when they felt their moments of stillness, and like how they created that in their daily routines. The last one with Luanga, who's a family friend as well, was about me asking about his future, where he saw himself, what kind of advice he would give himself in 10 years. And that episode I think it's really funny because it starts with a clip when I was able to get all of the youth together for like a mini photo shoot.
Yeah.
They were making fun of me. Well, they were just talking about like their lives, but there's a point where I think Rwanga is like, 10 years from now, we're going to be married. You're going to have to be having this. You're going to be having that. And then Mihlali laughs and she says, Faye exits the group chat. Because at that time, I was 30, not anywhere close to marriage, and I hadn't moved out of my parents' house yet, and I was just like, wow, they have so much hope for themselves, and I have not achieved.
No, man, too hard on yourself.
I implore you to go and anyone to go and listen to it. I think it's a really good snapshot of where they were at that particular time.
It will be interesting to see where they are now. When you come back, because I know you've got a lot on your plate for the next, year and a half or so. So hashtag Dear Us on Spotify. I didn't know it was on Spotify, so now I know, and I can. I think it's just a good moment of reflection because COVID was a thing. And then in 2023, you were part of the Cradle of Creativity with the Stories That Move Us. And that now gave you a different way of looking at how people were responding post-COVID.
Right. So 2023, I curated the Cradle of Creativity Festival for Assetage. It took place in Johannesburg. And yeah, the theme was the stories that move us. What's interesting about the festival is that you're having to look at work, as I had said earlier, from 0 to 20 years of age. We didn't manage to find work for 0 to 2-year-olds, so that year it was like from age 2 to 20. But you also want the theme to make sense for whatever age group. And so I thought the stories that move us was apt because we could talk about stories that transport us to different places, be it via like the imagination or like by set, and you feel like, oh, okay, I'm in this place now. For artists, it's like, oh yeah, stories that are literally getting them to travel across state lines or across provincial lines to come and watch theatre, and also for the people within the city, for some of them, like we're literally getting people to move out from their houses and their enclaves to come and watch theater. And then, what are the stories that evoke something within us,
Right.
that move us emotionally, that move us into action, that move us into being. So those are the kinds of ideas I was playing around with.
Yeah, I know. As for me, I think storytelling is so important. And, when I think of Wasafiri Africa, the reason why I want to explore conversations with just about anybody and everybody on the continent that is willing to have a conversation is because they have a story to tell. And through their story, then you get a different perspective, not only about life, but about perception of the continent, The other day, Faye, I was there. I walk in the company's gardens a lot, and I see this man, and he basks there. And on this particular day, I was with a friend, and she said, "Oh, it's such good music. Why don't you talk to him on your podcast?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not, actually?" And so I asked for permission, and he said, "Yes, it's fine." We agreed I could come back in a couple of days, and I sat and talked to Cedric. And he's a 70-year-old gentleman in Company's Gardens, and he's been playing for 5 years. And he has his guitar, and he has his tambourine and everything. But it's the perspective he gave me of the Company's Gardens. For him, it was an opportunity to be with the rest of the world. Can you imagine? He gets on a bus, right? And he comes, Golden Arrow, from Athlone to here, to town, excited about seeing the different nationalities that come to the Company's Gardens. Excited about being there on a Saturday when all the weddings are in summer, Excited about some of the kids who interact with him, some of the grown-ups who interact with him. And, so I said, "But do you, do people donate money? Do they give you money?" And he said, "Some people do. But that's not why I come. It does help me to get some money because then I can buy something to take home. But, not everybody's a giver. And you just have to learn to accept that maybe today you didn't have givers." I kind of was like, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to unpack, I love it because it's so beautiful, but he sees more than just the natural beauty. He sees the human beauty, That's what I saw. So I think that this storytelling is so important for us, and it's so important to share these stories about us on the continent and what we're doing, and to know that there's a Faye Kabali-Kagwa on the continent who is doing this, because this is the way we're going to change the story of us. And now Faye Kabali-Kagwa is off to Germany. Theatre de Welt in Chemnitz, which is German for Theatre of the World. That's what Theatre de Welt means, right?
Yes.
So this is going to be your first time to be involved with them.
Yes.
Okay, and it's the 17th episode, and apparently it's the most important theatre festival in Germany. Are you excited?
I am excited. It's an interesting opportunity. This is the second time that they have had non-European people
Second
curating.
time? Really?
Yes.
So the last 15 have been curated mostly
by Europeans.
And they've taken African production stories as well, and then they're curated by...
Yeah, sometimes.
Oh, okay.
They have had the work, but for example, was it 2023? That's when they had The Life and Times of Michael Kay, which was done by Lara Foote. It was a very high-profile production that has now toured at very many places in the world. It is award-winning, and we are proud. This is also the first time that they've had this many curators. So as exciting as it is, it's also kind of like it's new ground for everybody. And between us, we are going to about 200 festivals.
Are they going to split you up? You're not traveling as a troop of 9 or to all the 200.
We are roughly split up into different regions of the world. there can be some spillover because, things happen and you can't, we want to be open to, if you are in a place, you should be able to go and see a festival or see theater and propose it. I'm going to Southern Africa, Southern and Eastern Africa is my kind of focus.
Because you've been doing this for quite a while, how is this different for you?
So one of the things I was really excited by was being able to travel the continent. We were given a travel budget for this particular project. I feel like I can do this project well because I can physically be in this space, speak to people, talk about work, see what they're doing. In this process of thinking about what productions to choose, there are certain things that I'm questioning and asking myself, have the shows that have traditionally traveled, do I find them representative of the continent? When people found out about this gig, some people have said to me, I have the show, it's quite easy to travel, it's a 2-person show, it's a one-hander. And I was asking myself if I want to go for things that are good because they're economical. Can I have a bigger cast from the continent as well and show that kind of diversity, but also the kind of stories that will land? Yeah, it's scary. It's exciting. About what's your intention versus how will it land, and what does this mean?
And what does it mean? I don't know. I look. You're going to start seeing the productions. You're going to continue to have these conversations with people on council, and so that you can just let it pepper your mind, I think, and allow it to steep, really. But I think it's important that you listen to your own voice as well and what speaks to you, because it's you who was asked to be the curator.
Definitely.
And
I have some shows that that I love and quite excited about, and they're on my little short list.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could as yet say that I have a particular intention or kind of theme or narrative yet.
Yeah.
But I have been noting what are the things that I generally avoid and why am I avoiding them, so to run towards it, because we all have tastes,
of course.
So I'm just
but that's also important, you see, because I think in being reflective of the material that is on offer, I think quality, content, all that has to be reflective of the continent. And so some of it might not be, quote unquote, your taste, but maybe it's an important story to be shared about the continent.
Right, and that's also been really exciting because usually I have a lot more restrictions, or I'm doing something myself, so I can just be this is my taste. And for this festival, obviously it's going to be filtered through me, so it will be my taste. But what I'm relishing also is really thinking about this opportunity to travel within the continent has given me such excitement to be I want to talk to everybody who I think is making interesting work, who I might not know about, and hear what they have to say and really engage in their creative process, because the festival is going to have some sort of impact, but there might be a way, or I think there's definitely a way to think about how to connect theatre makers on the continent and to have us move more freely, and to really think carefully and strategically about curation of the continent within itself, which is making me quite happy to.
Yeah. You know, the one thing that excites me about Wasafiri Africa is my brief is to be who we authentically are, you know? And so it's quite broad-based, hence talking to a Cedric, hence talking to an asset manager, hence talking to a curator, hence, you know what I mean? So that latitude on this particular side means that that I'm literally traveling like you will be physically. I'm so jealous, but anyway, and engaging and using that to inform me on the Africa I perceived it could be right on the money. The Africa I perceived it, I could be really off center, but that's part of the journey. That's part of the learning.
Going back to this this reflective exercise, something that why I think it's important to reflect and what's been informing my process has been going through, as I said earlier, some of my own expectations, because this is how you even challenge yourself. Am I only looking at work where people like mid-career artists? Why? What if there is somebody who is early in their career, maybe even just graduated? It might be a risk to put them on an international festival, but it could be exciting if they know and they're given like the time, you know, they're given like 4 or 5 months knowing that they're going to have to do this thing. There might be time to sharpen it into something that is incredible. Am I choosing things based on like what is expected of me, or am I choosing things where I'm also challenging that expectation and things that are genuinely exciting, and then being like, if this is a risk, what are the things that need to be put in place in order to make sure that something like this, yes, resonates with the audience, but also the integrity of the artists is also protected. So when I speak to people, for example, I ask them, like, what do you feel about like having your show at a German festival? Like, do you have any politics that you don't want to be associated with? Do you have particular people that you think that the show is for? Because some people say, no, I wrote it for these people, and I don't think that this kind of story can be told in another context. Or if it isn't another context, I would like this to be involved. And I really think that is also the work of a curator. There has to be a level of understanding and respect on both ends. Everyone is maybe not protected is the right word, but
maybe honored. Maybe
honored, or
the work is done is presented in a respectful way, so that it's presented for what it is. What I mean by respectable way is that you don't try and change it to fit somebody else's. You respect the integrity of that work. You respect the integrity of that work. So that's what I mean by respectful. Because sometimes you say, oh, well, you're playing to a German audience, so you need to change this and you need to change this. And by the end of when you do that, it's not their work anymore,
No, for sure. I think
that's what I meant.
For me, it's more like, if this work is something that people say might offend the sensibilities like of the audience, then for example, the cast and the creators and the crew need to be aware of that, and ways to diffuse possible tension need to be explored before it goes.
I understand what you're trying to. I understand that some work cannot be intentionally created to annoy, But because it's a sensitive subject, there are those who might be annoyed. But then the work has integrity. So as to your point, it's about creating a space to diffuse that that tension, because the story has to be told.
I'm really interested in like finding ways or thinking about like, okay, if people feel angry or sad, or because some things like evoke incredibly, you know, like some people like cry intensely. Like, have we thought about what happens if somebody is so moved, and like there are places where they feel that they can escape or go or be held or whatever, or if people are going to be roused to anger, they feel that they can. Oh, that's tricky.
From where I'm sitting, I'm excited for you. I really am. I think it's going to be a huge learning curve for you, a lot of growth. You could end up getting everything right, but it's
very unlikely.
It's very unlikely. But that's not a bad thing. It's part of, it's as long as you get most things right. You know, I spoke to somebody else here, and they were presenting in Norway, and they had a piece that came after something that had caused a lot of anger. People were walking out, and he had to get on the stage and perform his piece. And sometimes you have to deal with that, you know. And what happened with his piece is that it created a lot of, it really diffused a lot of the tension. So he adjusted himself accordingly to tell the story, but also in a way that was cognizant about the emotions of the audience at that particular point in time. That he wasn't walking into a warm embrace, so, you know, people were a bit agitated. But, you know, for me, Faye, I'm just excited for you. I'm excited that you're in this position. You're a young woman, and a young woman of color, being a Black woman, and representing us in this way with your 8 other curators. I'm excited about the networks that you're going to make, you know, in such a short space of time, and also the growth that's going to happen for you. But because of your work, which on reflection you can see is quite broad-based, because of your interaction with people on the eastern part of Africa, you're not going to be a stranger in many of these places. And that in itself, I hope, will afford you some kind of comfort. How does your work already influence your perspective of the continent, or how does the continent influence your work? You can look at it either way.
I would say the biggest influence on how I see the continent, and therefore how it influences my work, is probably has been my parents' experiences. My mom specifically, but like obviously also my dad. I went to like what are now called Model C, so like formerly white schools. Like when we started, like there was still quite a large white majority. I was raised as a Black body, and people would like assume, like teachers would assume I could speak Xhosa, but I couldn't, obviously. And my parents would say you're Ugandan, and if people don't understand it, then they're ignorant. And so I've always been aware that we were like different, and there was like a different kind of experience other than a South African experience. There were obviously things that I learned here that I would like say or remark on, and they were kind of just disappointed. And my cousins also would think I was ignorant, like because they had a better education system in terms of them understanding. I think the South African world, when I was growing up, felt incredibly insular. And going to university and joining ESOC, for example, and like meeting Malawians and Zimbabweans and Kenyans and kind of, you know, I was meeting a whole gamut of people. Upon reflection, you know, in varsity, I and meeting all these people, I'm like, actually, there are a lot of us. There are a lot more people who have immigrated to South Africa and tried to, and you know, assimilated or have tried to assimilate than we actually talk about. And so I'm interested in some ways the assumptions that we make about like who belongs in a place and who really is here.
Right.
The continent is big. People have moved around for different,
And people
reasons.
move around naturally. It doesn't matter whether it's on the continent or people just move around.
Oh yeah, people move. People move.
Yeah.
And I guess knowing that implicitly because of, in some ways, the differences of my parents, have made me want to explore that and bring it to work.
So that's, I mean, I think you're in a good space, Faye, because that curiosity, that wanting to know more about Africa is literally being landed on your lap.
Right?
It's a good thing, right? It's literally being given to you, and it just makes me more excited. When I heard about it, I thought that's a good fit for Faye, but I know now it's an excellent fit for you. And it's probably what is going to even create more clarity in your mind about the kind of curator you want to be. And when you write about something, because you did double in the writing, reviewing a little way back in your career, that you will do it with a lot more knowing, a lot more knowing, which is good. And I'm glad that you always want to do, you don't want to just shoot from the hip. I like that you want to just be a little bit more careful. I know millennials don't want me to use the word respectful, but you you want to be a little bit more careful about how you handle other people's material. And that's really good. That's really good. And so what kind of music from the continent do you like listening to?
Oh, I'm so boring.
Why?
I listen to Afro beats.
Why is that boring?
I just feel like other people might give you like...
Who cares what other people say? I'm talking to you.
That's true. So I listen to a lot of Afro beats, so commercial music. Like for like the last 2-3 years maybe, I'm a Miss by Omale. It's one of my favorite songs. I don't know why. But I just feel like it's a vibe.
Who's that by? Sorry, in my ignorance.
Omale.
Omale.
Yes, I really like I'm a Miss. And then
so Omale is the artist.
Yeah, Omale is the artist.
Okay.
I enjoy music more when I'm with people. When I'm within people, I enjoy listening to The Brother Moves On. I love listening to Kujenga. I like listening to...
Oh, that's the one you invited me.
Yes. Kujenga.
Yes.
Thesis is Zede. I'll go to, those performances. When I'm in Kampala, I like to go to expression sessions, UG. Because that's also how I got into house music, South African house.
Yes.
Before I went to Rhodes, I didn't understand South African house. I was just like, what are you listening to? I don't understand it. But when I saw how people moved with it,
yes.
like the feeling
yes.
of it, it gave me an understanding of how the music is supposed to be listened to be appreciated.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. It's about developing, it's like understanding the language. It's a whole, it's a language, It's like if you think of different genres, they might even have different dance steps, and so there is that.
When I was in Kenya, I think I liked, was it Sukumawiki?
Yeah.
And also
spinach.
Yes.
Yeah.
But everything, I really loved the greens and also how everything was hot, like spicy.
Oh, okay, yes, yeah.
I feel like it's
there's a palette that's developed in Kenya for spicy food. I agree with you. It wasn't there. Our parents didn't really have it. I think it's, as people have got more culturally interlaced, they've tasted different foods, and then you're like, oh, it's like how with the English, I know it's nothing to do with Africa, but how with the English, their national, the most famous food is the curry.
Oh.
Yes.
That's
interesting. Yeah, that's not what you expect, right? Mm-hmm. You expect Yorkshire pudding or Sunday roast or something. Yeah, but I think that's what happens when people get exposure, and then you get to taste these different kinds of foods. And for travel, you're about to start traveling quite a bit on the continent. What excites you about places to see on the continent?
I really liked being in Kilifi and Mombasa.
Oh, Kilifi is divine.
I like going to coasts. I like Kilifi especially. It was the first time in the Indian Ocean as well. So I thought it was a lie that the water is warm. Like the water is warm. You don't have to go in gently. Because you don't have to go in here gently because I'm used to the Atlantic, and like in Cape Town you ease yourself into water. So when my Kenyan friend used
very carefully ease yourself.
When my Kenyan friend used to complain about the water, I was just like, no, the water's not bad. But after I went to the Kenyan coast, I understand. I am sorry.
I remember my nephew was so excited and he went running into the water. This is many, many years ago when we went and he dived in and he lay on the rock the rest of the afternoon. He had brain freeze so bad. He had such a bad pain in his head.
Right.
Because it was so cold and he just dived right in.
Right.
And
I mean, I want to see what the hype is about Rwanda, but I don't know, because people are always like, it's so very clean. Rwanda is clean.
I think Rwanda is developing its own vibe. I'm also very curious to see what Kigali looks like now because there's so much happening.
Right. So I've never been. I'm also. I've never gone to Tanzania.
This is your chance, hey? You're going to go to Dar and everywhere.
I want to go to Dar. I want to go to Zanzibar if I can. I think I do want to understand East Africa better in general. I just want to understand more. I obviously want to go and see what's up in West Africa, I've been listening to the Nigerian stars. I want to see what's happening in Lagos. I want to, take a short trip to Ghana. I want to see what's happening in Dakar. People are always talking about Dakar. Why not go to the Ivory Coast? I don't know.
Yeah, you're just curious now. You're ready. You're ready to discover the continent.
But I'll start in the East and make my way.
And look, I understand why you'd want to understand the Eastern Africa. It's understanding yourself as well, because as you said, that's where your parents are from. So when we understand our heritage, we understand ourselves better. Listen, before I let you go, you just have to let me in on what's happening here, because I saw that something about aspiring to be a cartoon character. And I'm trying to figure out why.
I watch a lot of cartoons in my free time.
Okay.
That is what I do for a long time. I enjoy watching animated things more than I like watching live action.
Okay.
And a part of it I really think is to do with the abstraction. As Spider-Man is so precious to me. Like, I will fight people over Miles Morales. I have a friend who is a comic book artist, a storybook artist. Like, his name is Bull Masuku. He's got Bill has a comic book character, a hero called Captain South Africa, and she is a woman.
Oh.
He also has a Razor Man. He's worked on like Iwaju, which was the Disney animated cartoon series that was based in a futuristic Lagos. In our house, we watch cartoons. It reminds me that there's something about cartoons that I'm just like, why not? And I do think that there's something about me. People often say, like, when they meet me, that I'm quite energetic, and there's like a youthful quality about me.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And so I think why I put it in my on my website that I'm an aspiring cartoon character is that I wanted to invoke some of that some of that quality to how I was presenting myself. I think my website does a really good job of showing me as like somebody who's professional in the workspace. But I don't think my quirky or goofiness is really full grounded.
Yeah.
So that line
tells it all.
Yeah, that line is a hint to who I am as a person and the kind of like kind of energetic abstraction that I also am and embody fully in the flesh.
When you explain it like that, it tells it all, because you have a playfulness. I think it's wonderful that you don't take yourself too seriously. As adults, we forget to play, and when we forget to play, we forget to reimagine ourselves. Faye, all the best. Thank you so much. In the meantime, Twendeni, Africa is ready.